Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to walk everyone through website design best practices that provide an inclusive user experience. So we'll dive right in. So here's kind of an overview of what we'll be reviewing. We're going to talk about what is ADA compliance and how it applies to your website specifically. We'll discuss some legal risks, some best practices, and specific actions you can take. We're also going to talk about ways to test the compliance, and I'll provide some additional resources for you. And then finally, we'll have time at the end of the presentation for discussions and questions. So if you have any really great questions, just jot them down. If there's a certain slide you want to talk about, we got time at the end of that, but we'll kind of get through all of these screens and then we'll have that discussion at the end. All right, so ADA compliance for websites has really been a discussion for over a decade, but it's only recently become more of a priority as part of the user experience and inclusion. And there's more and more lawsuits we've been hearing about that kind of have provided some urgency. So we really want to talk about, why does website accessibility matter? And an inaccessible web content really means that people with disabilities are denied equal access to information. And an inaccessible website can exclude people just as much as steps to an entrance to a physical location. So people with disabilities navigate the web in a variety of ways. People who are blind may use screen readers, which are devices that speak the text that appear on the screen. People who are deaf or hard of hearing may use captioning. And people whose disabilities affect their ability to grasp or use a mouse, they might use voice recognition software to control their computers and other devices with verbal commands. The ways that websites are designed and set up, they can really create unnecessary barriers that make it difficult or impossible for people with disabilities to use the websites. Just as physical barriers like steps can prevent someone with disabilities from entering a building, these barriers can be prevented or removed so that websites can be accessible to people with disabilities. So some examples of website accessibility barriers might include a poor color contrast. Now, people with limited vision or color blindness, they can't read the text if there's not enough contrast between the text and the background. For example, a light gray text on a very light colored background. There's also the use of color alone to give information. People who are colorblind might not have access to the information when that information is conveyed using only the color cues, because they can't distinguish the colors from others. Also, screen readers cannot tell the user the color of the text on a screen. So a person who's blind wouldn't be able to know that the color is meant to convey certain information. Like an example would be the red text alone to show which fields are required on a web form. There's also the lack of text alternative on images. And people who are blind will not be able to understand the content and purpose of images, such as pictures, illustrations, charts, with no text alternative that's provided. So we'll review some examples in a bit on that. No captions on videos. People with hearing disabilities may not be able to understand the information that's communicated in a video if the video does not have captions or a transcription that's provided. And inaccessible online forms. People with disabilities may not be able to fill out, understand, and accurately submit forms without things like labels on the screen, labels that screen readers can convey to the users, such as a text that reads credit card number, where that number should be entered. They may struggle to complete a form without clear instructions and error indicators. Error indicators would be something like an alert telling the user that a form field is missing or incorrect. Mouse-only navigation. So people with disabilities who cannot use a mouse will not be able to access the web content if they cannot navigate the website using a keyboard. And I got some examples of that in a little bit. So in addition to providing a user experience for all, there are some legal risks involved with website accessibility that's neglected. And I want to make it very clear, I am not an attorney. But simply put, you're vulnerable to legal action if your site excludes people with disabilities. Now, there aren't any enforceable laws I'm aware of related to website accessibility unless you run a government website or provide a place of public accommodation. However, for businesses with physical stores and websites, their sites can be considered heavily integrated with their physical store locations. So if their website could be considered kind of a gateway to their physical store location, they could be subject to ADA compliance standards. Some examples of that might be if you're mentioning on your website to get this offer and then come by the business to pick it up, or purchase this here and come pick it up, things like that. You're kind of marrying the two together, and you're telling people that this physical location is an extension of your website or vice versa, and that's kind of how you could become subject to those ADA compliance standards. So now we're gonna dive into some best practices, and we'll share some examples of actions you can take to ensure your website is ADA compliant and accessible for all. And here are some things to consider when implementing website accessibility features. Is your website perceivable? Visitors must be able to perceive or understand and be aware of the content and information presented on your website. Remember that perceive doesn't necessarily mean see with one's eyes. Users who are blind or have low vision often use screen reading software. Operable websites can be used without disrupting the user in any way. So all visitors can utilize every part of the site's functionality, from navigation to selecting a link from a menu or playing a video. And understandable. All content on your website, including your written and graphic design content, should be easily understood by visitors. I recommend just keeping it simple and digestible. The principle applies to your site structure too. So your pages need to be organized intuitively, and your navigation readily available to visitors on most, if not all, pages. And finally, robust. The content on your site should be easily interpreted and consumable by all visitors, including those using assistive technology like screen readers. Now, this can be accomplished by creating alternative text for images, also known as alt tags. Here's a website we recently launched for Sip and Sweet out in Clayton. And you can see an image of a delicious cup of frozen yogurt. Now, if you were to view the source code indicated in that little green and white box, you can see I've highlighted the code where we've added the alt text and described the image as a cup of frozen yogurt. The screen readers and other assistive software can now let the users know what that image is on the screen. Now, thankfully, most websites are built on like a content management system like WordPress. And when you upload an image, there's a convenient box that allows you to enter that alternative text, and it will add the HTML code for you. So in this case, there's a lovely bunch of daffodils. There's similar functionality if you're running like a Squarespace site when uploading images. You can see that little red box there. All right. So best practices also include the use of headings and subheadings to form an outline of the page. They help non-visual users, including search engines, to understand how the page is organized and make it easy for the screen readers to navigate. This helps make your content consumable. So I would avoid using tiny fonts and things that kind of smash together, keep it kind of spaced well and organized. You may notice there's some HTML tags wrapped around each heading in this screenshot here that requires some sort of HTML knowledge. But again, if you're somebody who uses something like WordPress, in this case, you can kind of conveniently highlight the heading, and there's a little drop down where you can select the type of heading format you want, and it'll add the HTML code for you. And now let's talk about embedding video in your website. You want to be sure to create captions and transcripts for video content. Most video services like YouTube and Vimeo, they'll transcribe the videos and help create captions for you. That type of software is just getting better and better, more intuitive. And so be sure to describe your video in a text form on the web page to give your website visitors a synopsis of what to expect from the video. So I recommend explaining what's in this video in a paragraph right above it or next to it, next to the embedded video. And those screen readers can kind of let the student know what exactly they're going to expect. And then further in the video, hopefully the video's got all the captions and the transcript kind of embedded in there as well. The use of navigation menu that works for all users. So in this example, it's very clear at the top of their site what menu options they have. You can easily book a demo. Many times that's where the contact button would be in that top right section there. And it provides various options to dive deeper into their content, and it's easily consumed. So you can kind of see all the different ways they did that. This one is called a mega menu. So as you hover over, or if you're on, if you're using keyboards, you would tab and then click into it. It kind of pops down, and there's a lot of different ways. You're reading text, you can click on things, so there's buttons, there's graphics. So this is kind of a mega menu. So that's an easy consumable navigation. When creating navigation menu, you want to ask questions like, can this menu be operated by a keyboard alone? So you can take the no mouse challenge and try navigating through your website and all of its features using the tab key on your keyboard. So that one's kind of fun. In this example, I find this website very difficult to navigate. I believe the design team was trying to provide a cool experience, yet it's difficult to understand that you have to click on the tiny little hamburger style menu in the top right corner to view the menu items. It's also very hard to escape the menu if you have trouble locating that tiny close button indicated by the X. So these types of navigation are common on mobile devices. And in some cases, you might find them on a desktop site, which provides a poor user experience, in my opinion. You want to offer accessibility tools that allow users to increase, decrease the font size, adjust the contrast, convert to grayscale, underline all the links, etc. So on this site, you can click on the purple box with the human icons, and you can expand those website accessibility options. So this is a really great feature. And if you are running a WordPress website, talk a lot about WordPress, it's the most common platform. If you're running WordPress, there's an accessibility plugins that a lot of them are free. And our office likes to use the one called One-Click Accessibility Plugin. You simply install and activate it, and boom, you have all those features right on your website where they can change those font sizes and all those things on the right there. Another best practice is to utilize functional web forms by adding labels to each field and offer recommendations if there are errors. So we'll walk through kind of each of these options here, give you some use cases. Option one, it doesn't have the labels for each field, which prevents a screen reader from assisting the user. So option one is rolling through, and where's the name field? Where's the email field? The screen reader can't help the user say which field is which. So option two has the field labels, but they're using a red color to indicate that there's an error with the password field. Well, that's not helpful for someone who's colorblind. Option three, it's a little bit better, and they've added an alert icon indicating there's an error. However, a screen reader can't tell what the error is to assist the user. Option four is much better. They have clearly labeled each form field. There's a mixture of error indicators using colors, icons, and most importantly, a description of the error indicating that the password is too short. Now the screen reader would be able to assist the user and let them know that there's a problem, and here's the exact problem you're having. So we're at the kind of tail end of this presentation, and I wanted to quickly talk about how to test your website and also provide some additional resources. So whenever we build websites, I always mention to our team to remember to use the duh factor when testing your newly developed website. Does it make sense? Is it easy to navigate? Is the content organized? Are there clear call to actions? This is what I call the duh factor, and it can be applied when evaluating website accessibility. I think you should all try out the no mouse challenge. So after this, you should try opening your website and click the tab key. You'll notice the little square box will highlight different areas on your site as you tab through it. And when you're ready to engage with that item, you click the space bar in lieu of a mouse click. So to kind of help you see what it would be like to go through that whole site without a mouse. ADA.gov has an extensive library of best practices, examples, tools, really help you build an ADA compliant website. And there's a bunch of compliance checkers available online. You simply enter your web address and it'll generate a report with a ton of errors. This will be incredibly overwhelming as it'll show you dozens and dozens of errors. So I recommend focusing on the items we discussed today. It's going to cover the bulk of things. It's really like what I call the duh factor. Can you get around this site? But of course, if your legal counsel is saying you need to be better, then I recommend consulting with a web development company who specializes in ADA compliance, and they can help address those errors. They would probably spend anywhere between 4 and 20 hours, depending on the size of your site, going through each and every one of those little details. I mean, it drills way far down in all those compliance checkers. There'll be all sorts of things that this image is too close to the text. This box hovers over something else that now the screen reader can't read it, or there's a visibility problem. The contrast isn't great enough. So there's a whole bunch of things. And so that's when the average person really would struggle with that. You'd need to hire somebody to get in there and really make it fully ADA compliance. But if you went through the best practices we talked about today, you're pretty much going to cover the bulk of things to get the people who are causing problems with you and want to cause lawsuits. They'll probably move on to the next site. I also have some leave behinds that will be emailed out with these resources. I believe Susie will take care of that for me. So that concludes the website accessibility presentation and